And welcome back to We Are the People. This is your host, Jason Preston. And very excited today to bring two incredible people on the show. We just released the show on the altars with Brett Henry. And, you know, we had a lot of conversation about whether or not we should address whose home it was. And we decided, for the time being, there's no reason to do that. At least we decided not to do it. And then we started having some conversations with some people in the background, particularly Goel, who had done a deep dive on that. And we realized we can't not talk about this home. And I think some things he's going to share today with you will probably solidify that this stuff is clear. There's too many coincidences for this not to be happening, for this not to be real. And I really appreciate everyone in the social media out in the across the country who's shining a light on this. Fact of the matter, this content is becoming mainstream, and as it becomes mainstream, that's where we can make a difference. So, anyways, Brett, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you did a great job last time. Appreciate everything you've been doing. Goel, good to have you again. It's been a minute.
Good to be here.
You're still out there raising Cain and chasing down these
out there
Satanists.
starting trouble. Yeah.
Well, we're glad to have you guys. So let's jump into it. Hopefully you watched the first one, The Altars. We had with Ashley Smith. She did an incredible job. So let's just bring it right back to you, Brett.
Yeah.
Tell us give us a little recap to our audience and bring us up to speed, and then we'll bring Goel on and have him share what he's learned.
So, it is probably about a month ago now. I posted a video with just this house I went in 2020 is a foreclosure house, and I went and showed it to a client, and just like, this is the creepiest house I've ever been in. I didn't really understand why it was creepy. It was just weird, and further I got in there, the more and more weird things kept popping up. And so then a month ago, I was scrolling through my pictures, and this popped up. I'm like, I'm going to make a post about this, just like this creepy house I went in. It looked like there was an altar room. Posted it like at midnight, went to bed, woke up the next morning to a ton of views on it. I mean, 100,000 views on it overnight, and hundreds of messages in my inbox saying like, this is satanic ritual abuse. I've been abused in rooms like this. A lot of people knowing exactly whose house this was. And so I was just like, this is the first time I've ever heard of satanic ritual abuse. And since then, I keep getting dozens of messages every single day from survivors of it. So, I mean, to say it's not real is absurd.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and what a blessing for you to shine the light on it. So, Goel, we've got you back. You're out there kicking butt. You saw the show. You've obviously been in the loop. Is there something there? What are your thoughts? Tell us what you found.
In terms of direct proof that ritual abuse occurred at that location, I don't have that, and I deal in absolutes. In terms of coincidences that keep piling up and down Foothill in Provo, it is yet another coincidence added to a mountain of coincidences. So the thing that I'm focusing on today is what appears to be a pipeline between La Canyon to Flint Ridge in California in Provo. And 4545 Brookshire fits that paradigm quite nicely, especially with respect to that house. The first owners were William Leo Critchfield and Eileen Critchfield, and they built the home. It was finished up in like 1981. There were two development companies that were involved. One was Flying Diamond. The other, I think Flying Diamond became Bow Development Company. They then sold it to Donny and Deborah Osmond. The third owner, Jordan North, a.k.a. Jordan Norsgaard, I think I may have gotten that last name a little off, but the third owner, Jordan North, embarked on extensive renovations. The house that you see now is much more expanded than the original house in 1981. But the third owner, he embarked on over $650,000 worth of renovations in the mid-90s. And apparently he had a problem with the contractor because they wound up in litigation. He stopped paying about $80,000 short of complete payment. So the contractor stopped work. They wound up embroiled in litigation, and so we know the specifics of what the contractor was doing from appellate briefs that were filed and from trial materials that were filed that are public record. The fourth owners were Craig C. and Deborah J. Christensen. And of course, Craig C. Christensen is Craig Christensen, and he is a general authority within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The fifth owners are Wilford and Joy K. Harris, otherwise known as Bill and Joy K. Harris, and they own Bill Harris Music in Provo when they were alive. I think Bill died around 2016. Joy followed him several years later, and that's why you were able to tour that house, because her estate was being unwound. So at the time that Bill Critchfield was building 4545 Brookshire Drive, he lived at 3737 Little Rock Lane in Provo.
This is the original owner.
This is the original owner.
Okay.
He lived across the street from the condominiums where Richard Lloyd and Karma DeYoung Anderson would retire in the 90s at 3736 Little Rock Lane, which the Andersons owned from 1992 to 2019, when the property was placed in trust as Karma's health and cognition became increasingly dire. She was over 90 years old. In the same neighborhood, Gary and Joy Lundberg and Gary and Bonnie Hansen, who were both named in the Hamblin victim statements as CS members and CS perpetrators, they own property at 3822 Little Rock Lane and 3680 Little Rock Drive. The Hansens and the Lundbergs are named in the Hamblin victim statements as members and perpetrators of the LDS Church of Satan.
And for those who do not know what the Hamblin victim statements are, if this is something you want to understand, that is the starting point. It is what, 3 daughters that all made
3 daughters and a psychiatric professional who in total filled out 8 separate victim statements that were released in multiple grammar requests. I have them up on investigations and ritualabuse.com. All of the materials that have been publicly released, the Provo police, unedited, uncensored, for anyone who wants to see it.
So, and we did a show, the very first Shadows of Power, the first 2 on that. So when he talks about the Hamblin victim statements, if you do not know what those are, you should be familiar with that, because it names how many perpetrators it named.
Over 140.
140. So when as he names names, that's where a lot of these are coming from. All right.
Yeah. So in 1989, George T. Mitten, I believe his name was, and Ewan H. Mitten moved into 3646 North Little Rock Lane. Ewan was mentioned as a prophetess in the Hamblin victim statements. They believe that she had the power of prophecy and she could prophesy for individuals in the Edgemont stakes. George is related to J. Mitten, who was a named member of the Church of Satan in the Hamblin victim statements. He gave a lecture in his study to the Hamblin sisters on the absolute necessity of polygamy as a condition of entering the celestial kingdom. His daughters, Julie Mitten Staples, she is named as a member of the LDS Church of Satan in those victim statements. Gary and Bonnie Hansen owned 3687 North Little Rock Lane, which was purchased in 1989 by James E. and Esther Rasband. James E. Rasband is the father of General Authority 70 James Richard Rasband. Rasband also owned 3771 Little Rock Drive, so he owned multiple properties in that same little area, which we're going to see on a map in just a bit. And just south, at 3695 Little Rock Terrace, in the same condo complex, Brent and Sue Prattley resided. Now, Dr. Brent Prattley was ordered to pay a $2,000 fine in 2000 for writing 6 prescriptions for controlled substances to a minor without the permission of the minor's parents. And the Hamblin victim statements and other sources allege that he raped boys in the Edgemont 14th Ward for years, but he was never punished. So Prattley lived with the uncle of Mark Callister, who's also in that same complex, David R. Callister, after returning from his mission. Now, Mark's father, Dick Callister, was the bishop of the locality of Flint Ridge First Ward, while the original owner of 4545 Brookshire, Bill Critchfield, was the bishop of the La Cañada Second Ward. So Mark Callister lives in the same condominium complex at 3848 Little Rock Lane even today. And he has other ties to members of the CS. Now, Dick Callister's grandfather, who officiated his 1959 marriage to Julianne Broberg, that name's going to be important later, in the Mesa, Arizona temple, which is where Robert Hamblin served. David Lee Hamblin's father served in that temple. He had a calling there. The apostle who officiated that marriage was none other than Apostle LeGrand Richards, who is Dick Callister's maternal grandfather. Dick and Julianne resided at 4537 North Mile High Drive in Provo until 1987, when they divorced and Dick married Virginia Lynn Clark. So what you see is two bishops from La Cañada to Front Ridge moved to Provo in the 80s. Just relocate. Dick Callister served for 9 years. I believe Mr. Critchfield served for 5 years as the bishop of the Second Ward. He was, yeah. So in a recollection, in a memorial statement that's written on Family Search for Bill Critchfield, he refers to himself as the burying bishop and Dick Callister as the marrying bishop, because they had over 24 deaths in the La Cañada Flint Ridge Second Ward in like a very short amount of time, like a year.
Wow.
And so he was presiding over funerals left and right. A woman comes into the chapel to inquire about getting married, and he said, "You got the wrong bishop. I'm the burying bishop. He's the marrying bishop." And that's recorded on his Family Search.
And from what I understand, the La Callister stake, or La Cañada stake, was allegedly a hotbed for this type of ritualistic abuse. Is that?
Yes, there are allegations out of La Cañada, Flint Ridge, of this type of abuse. There are also overlap between the families that we know are involved in Provo and those wards in that stake, which is La Cañada and La Crescenta. It's now La Crescenta stake, I believe. So Rachel Lee Hamblin, who married Tyler Jones, resided for a time in La Cañada, Flint Ridge, where Tyler's father, Jeffrey Jones, owned a home. Rachel alleged that her mother-in-law, Janae Anderson Jones, was a member of the LDS Church of Satan and a perpetrator of ritualistic sexual abuse. Janae Anderson Jones and Jeffrey Jones were divorced, and Jeffrey Jones has since relocated to Korea, where he is remarried, and he is an attorney there. Janae Anderson Jones owned the home at the end of Little Rock Drive, right down the street, like less than 3/10 of a mile away. In the Villages of Quail Valley subdivision, 3/10 of a mile from the condo owned by Richard and Carmen Anderson, the Hamblin sisters' grandparents. And it's where Roselle Stevenson lived with her daughters after her divorce proceedings commenced. So Bill Critchfield and Dick Callister both come to Provo from La Cañada, and alleged Provo CS members and families relocated to La Cañada as well, most notably Rachel Lee Hamblin and her ex-husband Tyler Jones. Bill Critchfield and Dick's son, Mark, lived or live in the same neighborhoods in Provo linked to the CS, and they buy and sell real estate from CS members named in the Hamblin victim statements, as you're going to see in a moment. The Hamblin sisters alleged in their victim statements that members of the Church of Satan move into areas with an existing CS presence in order to be safe or safer to practice their religions. So with David Callister, his connections to the Quail Ridge condo complex is documented through his nephew and his friend, Dr. Brent Prattley. They lived in the same house after coming back from their mission in like the 50s and 60s. They were fast friends. They both came from California. Dr. Brent Prattley, again, was allegedly raping young boys in the Edgemont wards with impunity in the 90s and facing little to no ecclesiastical discipline for it. So David Callister also has a further connection to the Hamblin case. He served 2 missions with his wife Susan, one of which was in Birmingham, Alabama, a mission where Richard Holzabell presided. Richard Holzabell's wife is Jenny Carol Broberg, the daughter of Jack McLean J.B. Broberg and the niece of Charles Wayne Broberg, whose daughter Julianne Broberg was Dick Callister's first wife. And so what you're seeing is corroborating evidence, at least circumstantial evidence, of what the Hamblin girls allege, that these groups function off of bloodlines. They intermarry within certain bloodlines. Richard Holzabell was one of the speakers at Carmody Young Anderson's funeral. And so, alongside Apostle Garrett Walter Gong, he spoke at Carmody Young Anderson's funeral. He has a long relationship with both Richard Lloyd and Carmody Young Anderson, and of course the Callister family apparently has a relationship as well. Because as I minimize this, what we're going to see here in a moment is a map. This is the house, 4545 Brookshire Drive. And one of the things that I want to call attention to,
I'm not seeing the map on here,
in terms of this map, is just how much concentration of ownership there is. Now, right down the street is Craig and Susan Suki Christensen, otherwise known as Suki Hamblin, David Hamblin's younger sister. Craig Christensen is an alleged member of the Church of Satan, so is his wife.
and he's also on the city council in Provo.
He
Just
is
got
now
elected
on the city
there.
council in Provo. He is also a bishop of a YSA ward.
That's right.
Provo. And so what we start seeing here is these houses right here. All these little houses that have the same little color house on them, all these lots. They're all owned by David A. and Zina P. Wetton. This one, this lot, this lot, this lot, and this lot. This lot is owned by an Iyer, so it doesn't fit within the pattern, but this lot up here is also owned by David P. and Zina A. Wetton. This lot up here is 4667 North Brookshire Circle. It's owned by Craig and Susan Christensen, who sold it to another couple that shows up over and over again in this neighborhood's property records. That would be Alexander and Mary Lou Terrazon. The Terrazons resold this property back to the Christensens in 2025, according to the real estate records. Now, another incredible coincidence is that just a block over on Redford, Brad and Terry Box live. During the time that Katie Hamlin was attending Tippview High School, Brad Mox was the principal. And he has two homes on Redford that he has owned. 875 and 903. And so he owned this home from 1996 to 2020. So what you're starting to see is a concentration of ownership in this real estate. You'll see this name over and over again if you go through the property records in this area. Homelick. But at the end of the day, the central question here, this had 5 owners. Started with the Critchfields, who sold to Donny and Deborah Osmond. Donny and Deborah Osmond then sold it to Jordan North. Jordan North then sold it to Craig Cloward Christensen and his wife. And then they sold it to the Harrises.
And
the question is whether or not that altar was an original part of the house, and who exactly in the ownership of that house was using that structure for what purpose.
yeah, I guess I still have another question that precedes that is there's clearly several people who own that home that have alleged ties to ritualistic activity. all of them? Some of them? It looked like the majority of them. Is that...
So the Critchfields don't have any allegations of ritual abuse that I am aware of. As far as Donny and Deborah Osmond, I don't have evidence, but do I have allegations against them? Yes. I have allegations against the Osmond family, multiple members of the Osmond family. But nothing that would make me as comfortable as saying with a certainty that I would say that David Lee Hamblin is guilty. And to be fair, this is the worst thing that you can accuse somebody of.
Yeah, absolutely.
You do have an extraordinary amount of circumstantial evidence that demands an explanation in terms of the location of this house and the structure that's inside of this house. You know, but at the same time, as you'll see, the coincidences just keep adding up. So we have James A. Osmond. He owns this house. We have David and Susan Grossbeck, who owned this house at 4597 North Foothill, right behind 4545 Brookshire, for 2 months. They then warranty deeded it to Robert T. Jackson and Susan P. Jackson. Why they would hold on to it for 2 months, who knows? But as we zoom out, we come down North Goel Drive. Ford and Roselle Stevenson. Roselle Stevenson, otherwise known as Roselle Hamblin or Roselle Anderson. David Lee Hamblin's ex-wife, the daughter of Richard Lloyd and Carmody Young Anderson. Richard Lloyd Anderson, BYU professor of some renown. They purchased this home from Mark and Colette Callister, Dick Callister's son and daughter-in-law, in 2008, according to the property records. Down here we have John and Shelby Walton Bunting. John used to be stake president, Edgemont Stakes. He is named in the Hamblin victim statements as someone who was a perpetrator of abuse. His mask fell off during a CS orgy after the excommunication of David Lee Hamblin from the Church of Satan. And the Hamblin sisters were able to positively identify him in their victim statements as one of the adults who were present and participating in the abuse.
He was the stake president of the...
He was the stake president of the Edgemont ward. He owns a machining company. He's quite wealthy and affluent, as most stake presidents are.
Are these homes we're looking at, is this part of the Edgemont stake we're looking at here?
You would be looking at homes that are either in Sharon East, Edgemont North, Edgemont South, and Edgemont proper.
Sharon East, that's the other big one. So
Yeah.
the Edgemont stake, Sharon East are the two big hot spots, allegedly in Provo.
If you're going strictly by a property record in concentration of ownership and patterns of ownership, you would say that those 4 stakes are infested with this.
That's where a lot of the victim statements come from.
Yeah.
What did you have,
There's
Brett?
one thing I was curious about is
Make sure you're talking in front of
Oh
the
yeah,
mic.
are these sales off market? Have you done any research onto that? Like, did these sales actually get listed and sold through the MLS, or are they just off market transfers?
I haven't done any research into that. I would assume that the ones where they're holding it for 2 months would probably be an off-market transfer.
Yeah.
But I don't have any verification of that.
Because
As I said,
that would also be interesting if 90% of these were off market transfers.
Is that
then-
something you could find?
Yeah, I'll do some research in that, because that would be something interesting to
That
see.
would be interesting.
yeah,
Because
that
I've
would
heard
be-
they typically like to do that off market, because if theoretically they are involved in this stuff, and this I think the Hamblin victim statements talk about it, if there's blood and evidence, of course you would want to keep that off market and keep it in the
Yeah, you
family,
would want to
so
keep
to
it in the
say.
group,
Yeah.
and that's what the girls allege. The CS moves in areas where they have an existing presence so that they can be safe or safer to practice their religious beliefs. And so if everybody on the block and in the neighborhood is involved in this, no one's going to report anything suspicious because it's not suspicious to them at all.
Yeah.
This is the earlier residence of John and Shelby Bunting at 3750 North, 1020 East. Over here is James M. Clayton and Sharice Gregerson Clayton. Her father, Gary Leroy Gregerson, was Edgemont Stake Executive Secretary to John Bunting. She's a distant relation, or they are distant relations, of Ann Meacham Gregerson through marriage. Ann Meacham Gregerson is named in the Hamblin victim statements as a perpetrator. She participated through barter in the child prostitution business of David and Roselle Hamblin. And she abused the Hamblin sisters, allegedly. So as we get down here into the area, the condominium area, where Richard Karma Anderson lived and where Roselle and her daughters lived after the divorce, where Roselle Stevenson purchased a condominium after her divorce was finalized, and where Bonnie and Gary Hansen, who are also named members of the CS, also lived. This is another property that Bonnie and Gary Hansen owned. They sold to James E. Rasband and Esther Johnson Rasband. This is yet another property that the Hansens owned. Down here are Gary and Joy Lundberg. So as you can see, if you're having an ordinance that you're conducting, like the home ordinances that are described in the Hamblin victim statements for ritual abuse, it's less than a half a mile, it's less than a quarter mile walk to any one of these residences where they could be holding one of these ordinances or rituals. They are geographically clustered together. Here we have a BYU professor, no allegations against him. His name is Kenneth Long, but he shows up in the property records. This is Mark and Colette Callister. They own this property. This is James E. and Esther Rasband again. They own 3771 North Little Rock Drive. They also owned 3687 Little Rock Lane. So you see the same group of people over and over again in this little geographical area, clustering. And down at the end, there's Janae Anderson Jones, the divorced wife of Jeffrey Jones, the mother-in-law of Rachel E. Hamblin, and an alleged member of the Church of Satan, and an alleged perpetrator of abuse. What you see in these geographical records is a history of allegations of abuse. Now, Brent Prattley isn't named as a member of the CS, but he is allegedly someone who raped young boys. He lived right here at 3695 Little Rock Terrace. Down here, you see Spencer J. and Shirley H. Palmer. Spencer J. was a BYU professor. His grandson accused him of molestation on Mormon Stories recently. And so you're seeing a number of people over and over again who have abuse allegations. The Ys represent people who are explicitly named in the Hamblin victim statements. The coated greenhouse on this location here at 3737, that's for the Critchfields, just as the location up here in the adjoining lots, 4545 and 4591, are coated green because the Critchfields were the original owner, and we want to show continuity and patterns of ownership. Now, there is a much larger master map that goes into other neighborhoods in Provo that I have that, for the purposes of brevity and clarity, I'm not presenting here today. But the patterns that show up here are demonstrated over and over again. And very early on, those were patterns that I noticed, that these people buy and sell from each other over and over again, multiple properties. They consolidate ownerships in these neighborhoods over and over and over again. And so the central area seems to be, one of the central arteries seems to be Foothill Drive. As you go down here, you will see multiple other houses associated with CS members like Kevin and Khalil Kelly, or other people who are not named in the Hamblin victim statements, but once you dig and you start asking around about them, you start hearing allegations of abuse, ritual and non-ritual.
Just for me, for reference, where's the Salt Lake or the Provo Temple at? Wouldn't it be right? It's somewhere
Provo
right there.
Temple?
Yeah, isn't it like right in there somewhere? Enough.
So the Provo Rock Canyon Temple That's right there.
Okay, so it's up just north of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess you could say, like, I grew up in this area,
Yeah.
so I know it very well. This was the place to be back then. Like, these were the elite high-end homes.
In Provo.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Now they built one in the city center. I believe this
Yeah.
is the new one.
That's the old
That's the old one.
tabernacle that burnt down. They redid.
So
That's
that's
very interesting.
That one is the one that is connected to New Skin, allegedly. There are tunnels between the New Skin building and the Provo City Center Temple, what used to be the temple. And of course, they built a new one, which is down Rock Canyon.
Yeah. We actually had a survivor who actually talked about being abused in the basement of the old tabernacle. I don't remember if she talked about tunnels or not, but yeah, I know that there was abuse going on at least in the old tabernacle. So, well, fascinating. What are your thoughts, Brett? And then I still want to come back to you. Any other thoughts you have? I want to still hear if there's anything else you can.
I guess one thing I've been hearing over and over again, and again, a lot of this is just new to me, is the bloodlines. And a lot of the stuff is related through bloodlines. And I've been talking with several people who keep bringing that up over and over again, and people who run in these bloodlines and have got out. And I didn't know this till just last week. And they're saying, like, yes, the bloodlines are a major key and factor to this. And they try to keep these things in bloodlines as well. So, and I don't know if that's for secrecy or privacy or what, but that's that seems to be a major part of it. So
Probably for a lot of things, but I think obviously it helps with secrecy and privacy because you have more control, but also I think they literally believe in the sacredness of certain bloodlines.
yeah,
And I think that also plays to our favor because obviously not everyone in a bloodline is guilty, but
yeah,
when you start to understand bloodlines, you start to look at bloodlines and you see, a cousin here with an allegation, a cousin here with an allegation, and and you start to go back, and it makes it helpful for
You start to
understanding
see
patterns.
coincidence after coincidence pile up. And the reason bloodlines are significant is because just about every single one of these groups still secretly practices polygamy through home sealings. And they believe polygamy is necessary for exaltation in either the kingdom of Satan or Lucifer or the kingdom of Heavenly Father / Jehovah.
Wasn't there a home you showed here before we started the show where there was someone who you said was actively still practicing polygamy?
Well, he came from a polygamist family, Ewan Call,
and you said he was.
or Aaron Call.
Would you walk through that to share what you shared with me?
So Aaron was raised in the colonies, or the colonias, and his father, Anson Bowen, was sent south by the LDS authorities at the time, asked to enter into polygamy. After the 1890 manifesto and whatnot, things were getting too hot. The church had lost its corporate charter. The federal government was after polygamists. And so Anson Bowen Call went down south. He married 3 women in total. His second wife died. His first wife was insistent that they live in polygamy, and we know this because they have family records of it, like booklets of their family records that are online. And so he took Julia Sarah Abeg to wife, and they had Aaron Call. Aaron Call married Kathy Grossbeck. Kathy Grossbeck is a distant relation, or she is a distant relation of the Grossbeck Smiths, which is Nicholas Grossbeck Smith, Senior and Junior, and they are connected to the Bountiful sex abuse ring.
Are we
their
talking about
granddaughters.
Dick and Brenda Miles?
Dick and Brenda Miles,
whole-
Bill and Eileen Carstensen, and of course Bill's alleged abuse stretches back all the way to his teen years.
Yeah.
So you're looking at a situation where these patterns continue or begin in early childhood or adolescence.
Yeah.
For many of these people.
Yeah, it's hard to believe though. All these little hot spots here of obviously Edgemont and what was the other one in Provo right by it?
Sharon East.
Sharon East. You have the hot spots in Bountiful. I mean, Pleasant Grove apparently has, hot spots. It's just amazing how this is allegedly permeating through the state.
Well, these people across religious denominations want to infiltrate any church that they can find. In part because they believe that by profaning the sacred, they curry favor with Lucifer, who they believe will ultimately win the final battle. It's just basically an inversion of Christianity. There's nothing too particularly original about it. In terms of why they believe what they believe on the LDS side. They do believe in sacred bloodlines or elite bloodlines. And if you look at the public announcement of polygamy, the sermon that was delivered by Orson Pratt in 1852, he talks about these elite premortals who are held back for the final dispensation between 3,000 and 5,000 years. And they're coming in the fullness of times, and they need goodly parentage, as he puts it, to give them earthly homes, so that they can take tabernacles or bodies. And what most people don't understand is that polygamy was not a widespread practice among saints. Only about 28% of saints actually practice it, and in order to enter into plural marriage, you had to have a recommends from either the prophet or from a member of the quorum of the 12 of the First Presidency. Otherwise, you weren't going to be selected to engage in plural marriage, and the purpose of plural marriage was to bring these elite premortal spirits to earth so that they could fulfill the final dispensation in the fullness of times. These people believe the same thing, but to an opposite end.
Right. It's interesting because we've met with some of the family members, kids of some of these high-profile perpetrators, and one of the phrases that they actually use is, we were always known as Mormon royalty."
Yeah.
And as we've talked to some different people who are either family tied to this stuff, and they know they are. That's one of the common things I hear is, I always grew up thinking we were Mormon royalty, and it's interesting because I never thought of that before. And again, you see it a lot of the music industry too, and you see it in Hollywood, but also a lot of we hear a lot of allegations of people in the music industry here. What is it? Joy and the Lundbergs, were they in the music industry too?
They were in the music industry.
Yeah, so you hear a lot of allegations of people in the music industry. I don't know why.
Yeah, so Bill and Gary, or Gary and his wife were in the music. The Lundbergs were marriage and family therapists.
That's right. Who was in the music industry? Was it?
Gary and Bonnie Hanson.
Bonnie
Hanson wrote a lot of songs. So she was a librettist. She wrote a lot of lyrics. She wrote a lot of songs. Yeah. So they're musical. You see this like Marco Davis, Andy Pitcher Davis, his second wife, and then his first wife, Kara Pratt, all musical, all into Celtic folk music. So on and so forth. I mean, Joe Binion's daughter, Louisa, she's a concertina player who plays Irish music in France. And she's a professional musician. Like, she is, there's no taking away from her talent. The Hamblin sisters all speak of being trained to play the harp and to play piano and whatnot. The harp was believed to be one of the instruments that Lucifer was proficient on. So it was very important for them to be proficient in it. And it also added to it was befitting their station, as their mother put it, for them to be musical and artistic.
Yeah. I just find it interesting how, Hollywood, it's just obviously rampant in Hollywood, this stuff. And then I find out in the LDS musical community, allegedly, it's very prominent as well. And I don't understand what this type of, fracturing individuals, how it helps them with musical industry, musical talents. But that's maybe a show for another time. But any thoughts on that?
In terms of like fracturing or pushing someone to perform, I mean, if you've ever played music, like at any kind of like you past an intermediate level, your parents invest in like a piano teacher or a guitar teacher and whatnot. It's not just a fun pastime. Like learning to play Rachmaninoff or Chopin's Revolution in C minor, or like Moonlight Sonata. These are incredibly physically demanding pieces when you're 12, 13, 14 years old. And the teacher, your piano teacher, is not joking with you for the hour a week that she has you. Like, if you don't practice, you do get your knuckles rapped. And to some extent, does it go too far with certain kids, like the Osmonds, whose father just referred to his sons by numbers and would physically discipline them if they didn't dance well enough or sing well enough or, keep time or keep in key? Yes. And for children who are subjected to an extreme amount of physiological stress or physical stress or mental stress, it can fragment their personality. You can see dissociation. Now, do the ends justify the means? Like, in terms of how those kids turned out, like, a lot of the Osmond children are millionaires. The Jackson 5. Like, Michael Jackson is universally regarded as like one of the greatest pop artists of all time. Now, morally, it's an abomination. But
I mean, you look at Beyonce. I mean, it's not hard to see how rampant it is in these with these.
Well, it's not just like pushing them to
Jay-Z,
perform.
I mean, it's
the sexualization of young girls and young boys. So when you're looking at Destiny's Child and you look at like their dance routines, like home video footage, if you've ever watched anything on VH1 about it, and how those girls were pushed to perform, they're not moving like 12, 13-year-old girls. They're moving like adult women at a club.
Yeah. There was a quote, I wish I could find it, but it says there's no limit to what someone can achieve when they can endure something there was a correlation how much suffering they could handle. So so a correlation how much suffering someone can handle. If someone could handle a certain amount of suffering, there's no limit to what they could accomplish. And it really, when I heard that quote, made me really think about this world. And obviously, I don't want to implicate anyone. We don't know. We brought up Osmonds a couple times. What they were one of the homeowners. That doesn't mean that they're guilty. But it's our job is to ask questions. Our job is to look at stuff like this and say, is there something here? Is there something, and that's for the people to decide. And again, I'm not accusing anybody. We're just saying there are some very interesting coincidences in that home.
There are extraordinarily interesting coincidences.
Anything else you want to share on that before we start to wrap up?
I'm going to continue to dig into it. I mean, obviously, anyone who wants to contact me can do so at investigations.ritualabuse.com. I have a dedicated email for that. And if you do have tips or information about perpetrators or about locations, I'm very interested in that. Initially, I thought the home that he was referring to was another home that had been previously owned by Donald Clark Osmond or Donny Osmond, because I didn't have allegations about that specific location. However, as I said earlier, this is the worst thing you can accuse somebody of.
Yeah.
And you need more than just a bare allegation.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. And then, Brett, any closing thoughts from you? And then also where people can reach out to you? Because honestly, I think it's good that we have multiple sources for people to reach out to.
And I guess, like, I'm relatively new to this, so you guys as more the experts, like, I get people messaging me daily just telling me their stories. Yeah. And I guess, like, if somebody wants to speak out or somebody wants to get help, what would you guys recommend?
Well, I mean, there's multiple places you can go. I mean, you can reach out to him on Instagram. If you email us at abuse@wearethepeople.org, we'll get you to someone who's, connected with Goel and who's doing research here. You can reach Goel at, what's your email again?
It's 1830GOEL @gmail.com.
There was another one you had. It was
GO.
No, the one you just talked about a second ago. Investigations.
GO at investigations and ritual abuse.com.
Gotcha. So, Well, honestly, we appreciate you guys. I thought this was important, especially after we met with Goel after the show, and he had done a little research and pulled that in. And when you overlay that with the Hamblin sisters and the things that they shared and about how these people tend to stay in the same homes, I thought, you know what, this is something that people need to be aware of. Not that anyone in there is we have a smoking gun that, hey, this person is. Not that we can prove that that's what that altar is used for. But what I tend to see when you add all that up is clearly something's going on, and clearly there's something there. And look, this is a risk to bring this on, to come and share this, especially with the names we've brought out. Goel's is being sued right now.
I'm being sued, but I'm being accused of stalking someone I've never met or interacted with.
Yeah, so Goel is facing legal implications. We're facing legal implications. So we don't treat this lightly. We wouldn't do this if we did not believe that there's that this is happening in this state. This is happening across this country. Satan has been ruling this world through these acts of darkness throughout time, and to think that in this great day where this is literally turning not left and right, but good and evil. And anyone who's telling you, oh, this is left and right, that is a facade. It is not left and right. It is not the Republicans are the good guys and the bad guys are the Democrats. No, this is a battle of light and dark, and the adversary is running, I believe, both parties. And the sooner we, the people, recognize that it is not left and right, it is good versus evil, and the things that are being pushed forward are of the enemy, the sooner we can start to fight the real fight. So thank you guys for all your support. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing. And thanks for supporting these guys. God bless you guys.